The last seed went into the ground 3 days ago, and Daniel Reyes knew it would never sprout. The soil had given up, just like everything else on this dead colony world. He sat in the ruins of Greenhouse 7, his back against a cracked support beam, watching dust drift through the broken glass panels above. 3 years. 3 years since the evacuation ships left without him. 3 years of rationing, scavenging, and slowly accepting that no one was coming back. During the attack, he had been in the underground seed vault, doing his job as a terraforming engineer. When he finally emerged, the sky was empty. The colony was burning, and every ship was gone. Daniel looked at his hands. They were thin now, the bones visible beneath skin that had turned gray from malnutrition. He had eaten the last of the emergency rations 6 months ago. After that, he survived on whatever he could grow. But the soil was depleted, the irrigation system had failed, and the fertilizer stores were empty. He was going to die here, alone, forgotten. A sound cut through the silence. Not wind, not the settling of old buildings. Something else, something mechanical. Daniel forced himself to stand. His legs trembled beneath him, but he managed to stumble to the greenhouse door and look up at the sky. A ship was descending, but it was wrong. The shape was unfamiliar, the hull covered in patterns he did not recognize. This was not a human vessel. For a moment, Daniel felt fear. Aliens, the galactic community that humanity had only recently made contact with. Some species were friendly, others were not, and he was too weak to run, too weak to hide, too weak to do anything except watch as the ship landed in the overgrown field beyond the greenhouse. A ramp extended. Figures emerged. They were small, perhaps 4 feet tall, with translucent blue skin and 4 slender arms. Their eyes were large and luminous, adapted for dim light. They moved carefully, looking around at the ruined colony with expressions that might have been curiosity or caution. Daniel tried to call out, but his voice cracked. He took a step forward, and his legs gave out. He collapsed in the doorway of the greenhouse, his vision going dark at the edges. The last thing he saw before unconsciousness took him was one of the small blue beings rushing toward him, its 4 arms outstretched. When Daniel woke, he was lying on something soft. The air smelled different, cleaner, with a faint sweetness he could not identify. He opened his eyes and found himself in a small room with curved walls that glowed with soft light. He was on a ship, the alien ship. A face appeared above him, one of the blue beings staring down at him with those enormous eyes. It made a sound, a series of musical tones that he could not understand. Another being appeared, older, with deeper blue skin and lines around its eyes. This one held something in its upper hands. A bowl. It contained a thick paste, pale yellow in color. The older being knelt beside Daniel and offered him the bowl. Food. Daniel's hands shook as he took it. He did not know what it was. He did not care. He brought it to his lips and ate, and it was the most wonderful thing he had ever tasted. Warm, slightly sweet, filling the hollow ache in his stomach that had become his constant companion. When he finished, the older being took the bowl and filled it again. And again. Each time Daniel emptied it, more appeared. He finally stopped eating and looked at his hosts. There were 5 of them in the room now, all watching him with those large, luminous eyes. The older one made more musical sounds, and a device on its belt emitted broken words. "You, creature, human, you hungry long time." Daniel nodded, tears running down his face. Yes, I was hungry for a very long time." The older being placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Its touch was cool and soft. "We, Halani, I am, Mireth, Elder. We find you. We feed you. You safe now." More tears came. Daniel could not stop them. 3 years of isolation, of despair, of slowly starving to death. And now these strangers, these aliens he had never seen before, were giving him food and telling him he was safe. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you." Elder Mareth made a sound that might have been a smile. "Halani way. Hungry creature is fed. Always. This is law older than stars." Daniel learned later that the Halani had almost nothing themselves. Their ship carried supplies for only a few weeks. Their homeworld was poor, their people always on the edge of hunger. and yet they had given their food to a stranger. They had saved him not because they had plenty to share, but because their hearts demanded it. Because leaving a starving creature to die was unthinkable to them, even when sharing meant they might go hungry themselves. As Daniel lay in that small room on the alien ship, feeling his strength slowly returning, he made a silent promise. These beings had given him life when they had almost nothing. Somehow, someday, he would repay them. He did not yet know how, but he knew that a debt this profound could never be forgotten. The Halani had fed a forgotten human, and humanity would remember. The translation device improved each day. By the end of the first week, Daniel could hold simple conversations with his rescuers. By the end of the second week, he could understand most of what they said. He spent most of his time with Soral, a young Halani scientist who seemed endlessly fascinated by humans. She would sit beside his bed for hours, asking questions about Earth, about human biology, about the strange world he came from. "Your planet," Soral said one afternoon, her large eyes wide with wonder. "You say it has water that falls from the sky?" "Rain," Daniel said. "Yes. Sometimes it falls for days. And plants grow without help? Without machines to make them live?" "In most places, yes. The soil is rich. The sun is warm. Things just grow." Soral made a sound of disbelief. "On Halera Prime, nothing grows without great effort. Our soil is poor. Our sun is weak. We fight for every seed that sprouts." Daniel was beginning to understand how remarkable his rescue truly was. The Halani ship, called the Gentle Dawn, was a research vessel. Its crew of 12 had been sent to investigate abandoned human colonies, hoping to find useful technology or resources. They had not expected to find a living human. Captain Feneth, who commanded the ship, made his feelings clear during a meeting Daniel was allowed to attend. "We cannot sustain this creature," Feneth said, his translator carrying his words in flat, mechanical tones. "He eats as much as 3 Halani. Our supplies were already limited before we found him. We could not leave him to die." Elder Mareth replied calmly. "I understand the law. I honor it. But the law does not solve our supply problem. We must return him to human space immediately and continue our mission." "We will return him," Mareth agreed. "But we will not abandon him before he is ready. He was near death. He needs time to heal." Feneth's 4 arms twitched with frustration, but he said nothing more. The elder's word was final. After the meeting, Daniel found Mareth sitting alone in the ship's small observation room. Through the window, stars drifted past in the black void. "I heard what the captain said," Daniel told her. "He is right. I'm a burden on your ship." Mareth turned to look at him with those ancient, luminous eyes. "You are a living being who needed help. There is no greater burden than guilt for those we could have saved but did not. But your people have so little. Soral told me about your homeworld, about the famines, the shortages. How can you give food to a stranger when your own people go hungry?" Mareth was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke. "There's an old story among my people. Long ago, when the first Halani were young, a traveler came to a village during a great famine. The villagers had almost nothing, but they shared what they had with the stranger. When the stranger left, he promised to return one day with gifts beyond measure. Many generations passed. The stranger never came back, but the village never forgot the lesson. Kindness is its own reward, and perhaps, someday, the kindness returns." She looked back at the stars. "I do not feed you because I expect payment. I feed you because it is right. What happens after is not my concern." Daniel felt something break inside him. Not pain, but something deeper. A wall he had built during 3 years of isolation, crumbling at last. "I want to show you something," he said. "Can you take me to your food storage?" Mareth led him through the narrow corridors of the ship to a small room near the back. She opened the door, and Daniel looked inside. The shelves were almost empty. A few containers of that pale yellow paste. Some dried vegetables. A small amount of grain. "This is everything?" Daniel asked, his voice barely a whisper. "This will feed our crew for perhaps 12 more days. After that, we must reach a supply station or begin rationing." Daniel stared at the meager supplies. These beings had found him starving and had given him food from these shelves. Food they desperately needed themselves. Food that could mean the difference between life and death for their own crew. Why, he asked. Why would you risk your own lives for someone you do not even know? Mareth placed one of her small hands on his arm. Because hunger is a suffering we understand too well. We cannot look at you and do nothing. It is not in our nature. Daniel thought about Earth, about the vast fields of grain, the orchards heavy with fruit, the warehouses filled with more food than any single person could eat in 100 lifetimes. Humanity had so much. These people had so little. And yet the ones with almost nothing had saved his life. Take me to human space, Daniel said quietly. I have something I need to do. Mareth studied his face for a long moment. Whatever she saw there made her nod slowly. We will change course tomorrow, she said. Daniel looked back at those nearly empty shelves and made a silent vow. These people had given him everything when they had nothing. He would make sure that they never went hungry again. The journey to human space would take 3 weeks. In that time, Daniel became part of the crew. He could not sit idle while others worked, especially knowing how much his presence cost them. So he found ways to help. He repaired broken equipment with skills learned from his years as an engineer. He helped clean the ship. He learned to prepare Halani food, stretching their supplies as far as possible. The crew began to warm to him. At first, they had watched him with nervous curiosity, unsure what to make of the large, strange creature in their midst. But Daniel was patient and kind, always careful not to frighten them with sudden movements or loud sounds. Soral became his closest friend. She spent hours each day teaching him the Halani language, and in return, he taught her about human history and culture. Tell me more about Earth farms, she said one evening as they sat in the observation room. You said a single field can feed thousands of people. Millions, sometimes, Daniel said. We have machines that plant seeds and harvest crops automatically. We have scientists who create new plants that grow faster and produce more food. We have so much that we sometimes throw food away because we cannot eat it all. Soral's eyes went wide. You throw food away? But that is impossible. Food is precious. Food is life. How can you waste it? Daniel felt ashamed. He had never thought about it before. On Earth, abundance was normal. Waste was common. No one thought twice about discarding a meal they did not want. We are not a perfect people, he admitted. We have plenty, but we do not always appreciate it. Perhaps that will change, Soral said quietly. Perhaps meeting us will help your people see what they have. Daniel hoped she was right. The supply situation grew worse as the days passed. Captain Feneth reduced everyone's rations, including his own. The crew ate smaller meals, moved more slowly, worked shorter hours to conserve energy. Daniel tried to refuse his share. Give it to the others, he told Elder Mareth. I can survive on less. But Mareth would not allow it. You are healing. Your body needs food to repair itself. We share equally, or we do not share at all. This is our way. It was torture. Every bite Daniel took felt like theft. Every meal reminded him of what these people were sacrificing for his sake. He began to lose sleep, lying awake in his small cabin, thinking about the situation. The Halani had almost nothing, yet they gave freely. Humans had everything, yet they often kept it for themselves. What did that say about his species? What did it say about him? One night, unable to rest, Daniel went to the common room and found Elder Mareth there, staring out at the stars. You cannot sleep either, she observed. No, he sat beside her. I keep thinking about the debt I owe you. It feels too heavy to carry. Mareth made a soft sound, almost like laughter. Debt is a strange concept. Among my people, we do not think of kindness as creating debt. We think of it as planting seeds. You plant a seed not because you expect the tree to repay you, but because trees are good. The fruit comes later or it does not. Either way, you did a good thing. But I want to repay you, Daniel said. I need to. What you have done for me, it cannot go unanswered. Mareth turned to look at him fully. Then answer it as you see fit. I cannot tell you how to repay a gift that was given freely. Only you can decide what it is worth to you. Daniel was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke. Your people have struggled with hunger for generations. Your homeworld cannot produce enough food. Your technology cannot solve the problem. This is true. Humans have solved these problems. We have technology that can turn barren worlds into gardens. We have crops that can grow in any soil under any sun. We have knowledge that took us centuries to develop. He looked at her directly. When I return to human space, I'm going to ask my people to share that knowledge with yours. Not a little bit. All of it. Everything we have. I'm going to ask humanity to end hunger on your world forever. Mareth stared at him. For the first time since he had known her, she seemed unable to speak. That would be... She stopped, her translator struggling with her emotions. That would be a gift beyond anything we could imagine. But why would your people agree? What do they gain from helping strangers? Daniel smiled. You gave me bread when you had nothing. How can I do anything less than give you everything? Maretha's large eyes filled with moisture. Daniel had learned that this was how Halani cried. You are a good creature, Daniel Reyes, she whispered. Perhaps humans are not as frightening as the stories say. Some of us are, Daniel admitted. But some of us remember our debts. And I will never forget mine. The ship continued its journey toward human space, carrying a starving man and a promise that would change the galaxy. The Border Patrol ship was huge. Its gray hull stretched across the viewport like a metal wall, bristling with weapons that could destroy the gentle dawn in seconds. Unknown vessel, you have entered human-controlled space. Identify yourself immediately or be fired upon. The voice came through the communication system, harsh and demanding. Captain Feneth's four hands trembled as he reached for the controls, but Daniel stopped him. Let me, he said. He stepped forward and spoke into the communicator. This is Daniel Reyes, citizen identification number 7429 Alpha. I am a survivor of the Harvest 7 colony. I have been rescued by friendly aliens called the Halani. Request permission to board and file a report. It was a long silence. Then a different voice came through, softer, confused. Daniel Reyes? Records show you died 3 years ago during the evacuation of Harvest 7. Records are wrong. I was left behind. I survived, and I need to speak with someone in authority. This is important. Another pause. Then the first voice returned, still harsh, but with a note of uncertainty. Prepare to be boarded for inspection. Any hostile action will be met with immediate force. The inspection took hours. Human soldiers in combat armor searched every corner of the Gentle Dawn, while medical officers examined both Daniel and the Halani crew. Questions were asked, documents were checked, and slowly, the humans began to accept that this was not a trick. Daniel was taken aboard the patrol ship for debriefing. He told his story from the beginning, leaving nothing out. The failed evacuation, the years of isolation, the moment he collapsed in the greenhouse doorway, the small blue beings who gave him food when they had almost nothing. The officer conducting the interview listened with a neutral expression. So you want us to help these aliens, she said when he finished. Why should we? What do they offer us in return? They offer nothing, Daniel said. They have nothing to offer. Their world is poor. Their people are hungry. They cannot pay us back. Then why help them? Daniel leaned forward. Because they helped me when they could not afford to. They saved my life knowing it might cost them their own. That kind of kindness deserves more than words. It deserves action. The officer studied him for a long moment. You will need to speak with the Agricultural Council. They control all terraforming and food production technology. But I warn you, they do not give things away easily. Understand, Daniel said, but I have to try. Getting an audience with the Agricultural Council took weeks of effort. Daniel had to navigate endless bureaucracy, fill out countless forms, and explain his story to dozens of different officials. Many were skeptical. Some were openly hostile. Why should we care about some aliens no one has ever heard of? One administrator demanded. We have enough problems of our own. Our problems are not hunger, Daniel replied. We have not known true hunger in centuries. These people know it every day, and they still saved me. Does that not mean anything? Some people were moved by his words. Others were not. But slowly, through sheer persistence, Daniel climbed the ladder of authority until he stood before the council itself. He was not alone. Elder Mareth had been granted special permission to accompany him, the first Halani ever to set foot in this chamber. She stood beside Daniel, small and fragile looking among the tall humans, but with a dignity that commanded respect. The council chamber was vast, filled with representatives from every human agricultural world. Thousands of eyes watched as Daniel stepped forward to speak. "Thank you for hearing me," he began. 3 years ago, I was abandoned on a dying world. I starve alone in the ruins of a failed colony. And when I had given up all hope, these people found me. He gestured to Elder Mareth. They're called the Halani. Their homeworld is poor. Their harvests are meager. Hunger has been their companion for generations. And yet, when they found a starving stranger, they shared their food without hesitation. They saved my life with the little they had. He paused, letting the words sink in. I am not asking you to help them because we will gain something. I am asking because they deserve it. Because kindness should be rewarded with kindness. Because we have so much, and they have so little, and the gap between us should shame us into action. Murmurs rippled through the chamber, some approving, some skeptical. What exactly are you proposing? The council speaker asked. Everything, Daniel said. I'm proposing that we give them everything. Terraforming specialists, engineered crops, soil enrichment technology, training and support. Enough to transform their world from a place of hunger into a place of abundance. Enough to end their suffering forever. The murmurs grew louder. Some representatives shook their heads. Others leaned forward with interest. That would require enormous resources, the speaker said. Years of effort, billions of credits. Yes, Daniel agreed. It would cost us greatly. But is cost all we care about? When did we become a people who measure everything in profit? These beings gave me bread when they were starving. We have warehouses full of grain. If we cannot show the same generosity from plenty that they showed from poverty, then we do not deserve our abundance. The chamber fell silent. Elder Mareth stepped forward. Her voice was soft, her words simple. We do not ask for charity. We ask only that you remember what it means to be hungry, and that you choose to be the ones who end hunger rather than the ones who ignore it. The vote would come tomorrow, but looking at the faces around him, Daniel felt hope for the first time in years. The night before the vote, Daniel could not sleep. He walked the corridors of the human station where he had been given temporary quarters, his mind racing with worry. What if they said no? What if all his efforts meant nothing? What if humanity turned its back on the very people who had saved his life? He found a small observation deck and stood there, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out, there was Hilera Prime, a cold world where millions of Halani went to bed hungry every night. And somewhere closer was the gentle Dawn, still docked at the station, its crew waiting anxiously for news. You cannot sleep either. Daniel turned. Elder Mareth stood behind him, wrapped in a thermal blanket against the cold that humans barely noticed. No, he admitted. I keep thinking about what happens if they refuse. Mareth came to stand beside him. Then they refuse. And we return home. And nothing changes. It would not be the first time hope was disappointed. But you saved my life. You deserve better than disappointment. We saved you because it was right, not because we expected reward. If reward comes, we will be grateful. If it does not, we will still have done a good thing. She looked up at him with those ancient, luminous eyes. You have already given us more than you know, Daniel Reyes. You have shown us that humans can be kind. That alone is a gift. Daniel felt tears prick his eyes. Even now, facing possible rejection, the Halani offered him comfort instead of blame. The council reconvened the next morning. The chamber was even more crowded than before, filled with observers and reporters who had heard about the unusual proposal. Daniel took his place at the speaking platform, Elder Mareth beside him. The speaker called for order, then announced that the debate would continue before the final vote. Representatives rose one by one to speak. Some argued in favor of helping the Halani, citing moral duty and the value of galactic goodwill. Others argued against, pointing to the massive cost and a lack of any clear benefit to humanity. We cannot solve every problem in the galaxy, one representative insisted. Our resources are not unlimited. If we help these Halani, who do we help next? Where does it end? Daniel listened with growing frustration. These people had never known true hunger. They had never watched their supplies dwindle to nothing. They had never faced starvation alone on a dying world. When his turn came to speak again, he did not argue with numbers or logic. He spoke from his heart. "I understand your concerns," he said. "I understand that resources are valuable and that we cannot help everyone. But I am not asking you to help everyone. I am asking you to help these people specifically because of what they did." He gestured to Elder Mareth. "This woman found me dying in the ruins of a failed colony. Her ship had supplies for 12 days. 12 days for a crew of 12. And she ordered her people to share their food with a stranger. She did not ask what I could give her in return. She did not calculate the cost. She saw a hungry creature and fed him. Because that is who she is. That is who her people are." He paused, looking around the chamber. "We have always prided ourselves on being the best of what intelligent life can be. We say we are brave, compassionate, generous. But words mean nothing without action. These people proved their generosity with sacrifice. Now it is our turn to prove ours." The chamber was silent. "They gave me bread when they were starving," Daniel said, his voice breaking. "We can give them everything. We have so much, more than we can ever use. Is it really so hard to share?" He stepped back, unable to say more. The speaker called for the vote. Daniel watched the numbers appear on the display screen, his heart pounding. Yes votes appeared, then no votes. The totals climbed, sometimes one ahead, sometimes the other. Finally, the counting stopped. The proposal had passed. By a margin of just 37 votes, humanity had agreed to help the Halani. The chamber erupted in noise, some cheering, some protesting, but Daniel heard none of it. He turned to Elder Mareth and saw tears streaming down her translucent blue face. "It is happening," she whispered. "After all these generations of hunger, it is finally happening." Daniel knelt down and embraced her, this small, fragile being who had given him everything when she had nothing. "I told you I would repay you," he said. "I told you I would never forget." Mareth held him tightly, her 4 arms wrapped around him. "You are a remarkable creature, Daniel Reyes. Your whole species is remarkable. We thought humans were dangerous. We did not know you could be so kind." In the weeks that followed, the plan took shape. A fleet of agricultural ships was assembled. Scientists, engineers, and farmers volunteered to join the mission. Equipment was loaded, seeds were prepared, and humanity prepared to give the greatest gift it had ever given. Daniel insisted on joining the mission. He had started this journey, and he would see it through to the end. As the fleet prepared to depart for Hilera Prime, Daniel stood on the observation deck of the lead ship, looking out at the hundreds of vessels that would accompany them. Each one carried food, technology, and hope. The Halani had fed a forgotten human with their last bread. Now, humanity was feeding them back with endless abundance. 5 years had changed everything. Daniel walked through fields of golden grain that stretched to the horizon, crops that would have been impossible on this world just a few years ago. The soil beneath his feet was rich and dark, transformed by human technology from barren dust into fertile earth. Beside him walked Elder Mareth, older now but stronger than she had ever been. For the first time in her long life, she had known true abundance. No rationing, no hunger, no fear of tomorrow. "Do you remember what this place looked like before?" she asked. Daniel nodded. He remembered the gray, lifeless ground, the struggling plants that produced barely enough to survive on, the hollow faces of Halani who had never known a full stomach. Now, those same Halani worked in the fields alongside human advisors, learning techniques that had taken humanity centuries to develop. Massive greenhouses dotted the landscape, protecting delicate crops from the harsh climate. Automated systems distributed water and nutrients with perfect efficiency. The first harvest had been modest. The second was better. By the 3rd year, Hilera Prime was producing more food than it had ever grown in its entire history combined. And it kept growing. "We have begun exporting," Mareth said quietly. "Other species have heard of what happened here. Other hungry worlds have asked for help. We are sharing what you gave us." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest. The ripples were spreading, just as Mareth had always said they would. "That is good," he said. "That is exactly how it should be." They walked in comfortable silence until they reached a small hill overlooking the main agricultural complex. Below them, thousands of Halani and hundreds of humans worked together, tending crops, maintaining equipment, building a future that neither species could have created alone. A ceremony was scheduled for that afternoon to mark the 5th anniversary of Daniel's rescue. Leaders from both species would attend. Speeches would be given. But for now, Daniel and Mareth stood alone on the hillside, watching the world they had changed together. "I never thanked you properly," Daniel said at last. Mareth looked at him with surprise. "You have done nothing but thank us. You gave us everything." "No, I mean for saving me. Not because you expected anything in return. Not because it was easy. You saved me because you believed it was right. And that belief changed my life. It showed me what people can be when they choose kindness over calculation." Mareth was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "I had a dream once when I was young. I dreamed that a stranger would come to our world and bring food enough for everyone. My mother told me it was just a story, a tale for children. But I never stopped believing it might come true someday." She looked up at him. "I did not know the stranger would be human. I did not know we would have to save him first before he could save us. But the dream came true. It just took longer than I expected." Daniel felt tears on his face. He did not try to hide them. The ceremony that afternoon was attended by millions. Halani from every region of the planet gathered to honor the anniversary. Human dignitaries arrived from dozens of worlds. The event was broadcast across the galaxy. Elder Mareth spoke first. Her words were simple but powerful. 5 years ago, we found a dying creature on an abandoned world. We had almost nothing, but we gave what we could. We did not expect repayment. We did not expect anything. We only knew that a hungry being must be fed." She paused, looking out at the vast crowd. "What came after was beyond our imagination. The humans did not repay us equally. They repaid us with abundance beyond measure. They gave us food, technology, and hope. They ended hunger on our world forever." Cheers erupted from the crowd. Mareth waited for silence before continuing. "We have learned something important from this. Kindness is not a transaction. It is a seed. You plant it without knowing what will grow. Sometimes nothing comes of it. Sometimes a forest rises from a single seed. But you must plant anyway, because that is what makes life worth living." When it was Daniel's turn to speak, he kept his words brief. "I was forgotten," he said, "left behind to die alone. And the people who had nothing saved me anyway. They taught me that generosity is not about having plenty to share. It is about sharing whatever you have, even when it hurts." He looked at Mareth. "Humanity did not help the Halani because we are noble or righteous. We helped them because they showed us what we could be. They reminded us that kindness is not weakness, that giving is not losing, that the measure of a civilization is not what it keeps, but what it shares." The crowd was silent. "The Halani fed a forgotten human," Daniel concluded, "and humanity learned, at last, what it means to be truly abundant." The applause lasted for a very long time. After the ceremony, as the crowds dispersed and the sun began to set over the golden fields, a small Halani child approached Daniel. She was carrying a piece of fresh bread, still warm from the oven. "For you," she said shyly. "My grandmother says to always share bread with humans, because you share with us first." Daniel knelt down and accepted the gift. The bread was soft and fragrant, made from grain that had grown in soil transformed by human hands. "Thank you," he said. "I will never forget this." The child smiled and ran back to her family. Daniel stood on the hillside, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and amber. Mareth came to stand beside him, and together they looked out at a world that had been saved by a single act of kindness. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them needed to. Some debts cannot be measured, and some gifts have no end.